All right, so here is something I'd like to show that I've been working on recently. Um, Let me give it a little bit of a preface. I've been recently working on a template framework to capture all of the stupid, simple things that I always would want to do with any given app. And I'll tell you the kind of things and show you the kind of things that I'd prefer to see on the front end, on the UI side. So if we start with the window that we're looking at, and you look to the left, we see a bunch of menus, or like a bunch of different items in this menu. You can toggle the dark mode on this, and you get like dark mode. I had a couple over here for showing console and hiding console. That was for an effort to do a custom console that pops in, but I've kind of went a different direction for that. You can open this window into full screen, and then naturally exit the full screen. A couple examples of what I've done with this. I have a traffic simulator, basically just shows little cars going everywhere, and turning and all of that stuff. I've created a Pixie.js demo. Basically, it's just a little game, and you can click around and go to different places, whatever. But this is not really the thing that I'm trying to show. What can actually go into these UI widgets or whatever. Mainly, it's just that I almost always need a menu system, or I need a login system, and basically like I need front end stuff, and I don't want to spend a ton of time working on the front end. I just want the template. Okay, so I don't really need to go too crazy on explaining that. The thing is, with the template, I can compile all of that into JavaScript and just serve that up on a CDN, and that means that it's very easy for me to come up with an idea, and I just deploy that to GitHub. You see up here that this is crosshj.com/experiments. All I do is create another folder on that particular repo and check it in, and I have something new. So on the front end side, it's reasonably easy to have this whole, like, I can rapid develop like any app that kind of follows this basic theme. I didn't show the mobile aspect of this, but you can see that, like, on a mobile, it has the same exact kind of stuff, and yeah, so there's the traffic app and whatever. The front end's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Okay, there's this other thing though, that I'm wanting to show called bartok, and I'll tell you, the reason I called it bartok is because I searched for a composer. I didn't want to call this thing composer, and so I just searched for a composer named Bartok. Bartok, that sounds like a cool name. Okay, I doubt anybody's named their cool orchestration thing Bartok. Okay, cool. So what does this do? What does this solve? This solves it solves the back end, and it solves it in a way that, like, I would expect that AWS Lambdas, or OpenFaaS, or any of the other function as a server, or some function as a service platforms would solve it. It solves it in an easy way. You don't have to go to like some giant console and configure things all crazy or whatever. Basically, all you have to do when you're trying to deploy some API code is you go into whichever service that you've stood up, and you click on it, and now whatever code that you had that you wanted to run is running, and you have the editor here. You have a name, and then you have an ID. The ID is standard, kind of like primary key on in a database, that kind of thing. You'll notice if you look above this editor that we have a bunch of different buttons. I will tell you, I have not spent a ton of time on the UI of this. So some of the things like loading and that kind of stuff are a little awkward at the moment. What I did want was to get the back end of this like reasonably tight, and I don't have a diagram to show what the back end looks like, but I can go into it like reasonably simple, or in a reasonably simple way. Essentially, this server, it basically is stood up to be like the central point for all of the services that you might want to host. And so essentially what it does is whenever you send this code, whenever you say that you want to update this code, basically that code gets pushed to the back end, and you'll see you don't get any loading state or anything like that. But that code gets pushed to the back end, and essentially a process is spawned with this code. It's actually forked, but you can think of it as spawning. This code gets forked, and now we have a separate instance of node that the main process can communicate with. The first thing this one in particular does, is as soon as it gets a message from the parent, it just sends back a message to the parent. So parent sends it ping, it sends pong. That's pretty much just what's happening here. And there you go. That's pretty much what it is. I don't have an example of like complex code running on this server, but let me just talk about how like really cool this can be. I'm not going to go into the Kubernetes stuff. That's basically items 1 through 6, and I will not tell you that I have like a full Kubernetes system working here, nor do I really want to, because I want what I'm doing to be much simpler. I am someone who's experienced with setting up Kubernetes on my enterprise server in the basement, and I'll tell you that like it took way more effort than I really think it should have to, especially for people who are just trying to get hosted functions. I do have experience also with Lambdas, and I'll tell you that Lambdas aren't terribly hard, but there's just too much stuff around setting up a Lambda. It doesn't feel like as simple as the word Lambda inspires you to think it is. Okay, so let's just, instead of looking at the Kubernetes stuff from items 1 to 6, let's look at item number 8 here. What if we just wanted to set up a simple node server? Okay, we're going to have this node server running on HTTP port, and we're just going to use node HTTP module and node URL module. We've got that same thing going on from before. Whenever this service hears a message, it's just going to send a message back, and in this case, it's going to include its name, so I can console log that in the host. But look here. Okay, so we have the app. It creates a server, and basically it responds. It's listening on port 5000. It responds with, "Hey, I'm a simple server." Okay, cool. We have essentially like when the server is going to try to come up, it's going to try to listen on port 5000. If it can't come up, it's going to send back a message to the host process saying, or the parent process saying, "Hey, I couldn't come up on this." And then here we have that same thing. Anytime you see a message, just send the message back with the thing pong appended to it. I would like to go a little bit more into the stuff that like process on message that I plan on building into the server, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I just want to show you that like you can have this simple server that everybody's used to seeing. You could just come in, paste this into here, and hit that you want you want to update this, or in the case of this is a new something you would create. But I'm just going to hit update, and all right, wait just a second, and now I'm going to go look on port 5000 and just see what we have running over there. We have a simple server over there. that's cool. Like we could write a bunch of APIs, or if we had Express in there, we could just have this server serving up the APIs that we need, and we could have Mongoose in there. Um, cool. Well, let's just look. Let's see what Express looks like in there. Okay, we have more than a simple server. Cuts down the lines a few. We're now at Express is going to come up. It's going to serve basically everything on this particular port, localhost 5001. Okay, cool. I already have one of these cooked in the background, so I don't have to do all the baking. Anyways, I'm more than a simple server. Okay, you can tell I've not like went crazy on the application here. Like I've not got to a point where it's like let's write a complicated application. But I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that spawning another node process on port 6000 is going to cause a problem. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Basically, I'm hosting forked node processes. I don't have an example of this running with Spawn, although I could do the same thing. Like the main thing with Spawn is like I could do PHP, I could do Ruby, I could do whatever you wanted on the back end, and at that point you would expect to see some kind of drop down that shows which kind of code, which kind of a service you want up and running. And I can have the same kind of communications, but I haven't really built that out yet. Another thing, I would expect that any kind of service that you're building, that it wouldn't be just one file. Maybe we wanted to require other files or whatever. I'm planning on putting a file structure navigator over here on the left in this panel, which I can do. I just haven't done yet. A couple interesting points to note. You may, I don't know if I can say, like, you may recognize this editor. This editor is essentially the same thing that Chrome uses for its dev tools. And the terminal that I plan on putting in is xterm.js. It's not going to be a ton of problem for me to like put that in. The more that you see changes, eventually this bartok will get to a point where it doesn't really look like anything different than VS Code. It's just going to look like an editor, but it's going to be like a little bit more enhanced. And let me bring up. I'm hosting this, like, you can go to a website. I didn't have to tell you to download VS Code or talk about what are your preferences for VS Code, and I didn't have to tell you install Node. I didn't have to do any of this stuff. I can just tell you from a developer's point of view, like, if you could have like everything pretty much lined up for you. And you could make your APIs and check on your APIs and see what's deployed and what the status is of it, all in the browser. Man, I think I would love that, and that's the reason why I'm building it, because I would love that. This is for my own use, and I've been a little bit disgruntled at work. So what I've decided to do, if I try to build something, or I want to build something for a company and the company doesn't want me to build it, I'm just going to build it for myself. And so there's a few things going on that I would really like to add into this, and I plan on adding in as soon as possible. This may not let me log in. Okay. Anyways, if you've seen WeaveScope before, WeaveScope is kind of like this thing that gives you the view of all of the stuff that you have deployed, and pretty much draws lines in between it. You can drag and drop, and you can go into each of those and see what kind of output is happening on the terminal, or you can interact with the terminal. I plan on delivering the same exact thing here, and it's not a terrible, it's not terribly hard to do this from a UI point of view, and it's not terribly hard to do it from a back-end point of view. The UI, I've already worked through the whole boxes and wires kind of thing that you get for being able to draw these maps. What I'd really like to say is that I could come to a company, or I could deliver something that everybody promises, like with Kubernetes, or everybody promises with function as a service. I can do that and do it in a more simple way, in a way that's more fun to use, because I can actually see the fun behind those things, but I kind of feel like the fun is being left out. And so instead of being mad about it, I'm just trying to make the thing. Um, let me spin this another way. If you if you are interested in creating things that you can spin up like really quickly, this is it. This is the platform for that. Essentially, we have Google hosted apps. We have apps and App Engine, Lambdas, VMs, all these things that like the big names are trying to deliver, and I feel like I can deliver in a more simple way, and also in a way that like is more intuitive to the people who are working on it. So you tell me, if you'd like to spin up a new endpoint, wouldn't you like to just be able to hit go on whatever server that you have access to? You know, obviously log into it. Wouldn't you like to just hit go there and just start typing code, hit update or create, and that code be running like right then? Or would you prefer to set up a repository and get AWS set up, or get your Lambda set up and that kind of stuff? Me personally, I would prefer to skip all those steps, and like while I'm talking with someone says, yeah, we need about 5 endpoints. One does this, one does that. Let's just go ahead and do that. Let's just go ahead while we're talking about it and just get that working. And then, if it's going to take a long time to build out the UI or whatever, let's spend some time on the UI. But I've created a system that can make the back end creation like not only easier, it can also make it make you have more eyes on the back end than what you had in the first place. Anyways, it's just an early start. I'm pretty excited about it, if you can't tell. But I don't know. There it is, and you tell me what's up.